Hello and welcome to SONAR. We're finally back after 2 months of hiatus because I was trying to graduate high school and achieve adequacy. We are finally here to talk some more about voice acting. I have with me the lovely Dean Richards.
Hello, I'm quite lovely. Nice to meet you again.
He's very lovely. And we are going to talk about auditions today. Specifically, how to audition and what makes a good audition.
Yes, coming from the perspective of voice actors, not animators.
Yes, well, sort of both. Next week we'll probably be talking about how to make a good audition, like for animators, how to make an audition that
good casting call.
Yeah, good casting call for people to audition for. I know the word audition is really you can use it either way, and that's pretty confusing. Actually, we probably should avoid that. That's
to clear it up a little bit.
To clarify, auditioning
differentiate auditions and casting calls.
Auditioning is what you do for a casting call. That, for all intents and purposes of our podcast, that's what it means here. You really use the words almost interchangeably, but for the purposes of us,
but for the sake of convenience,
sake of conveniency and not confusing everyone, mostly me,
right?
Mostly me. We're casting calls are auditioned for. That's the relationship. All right, so we already covered I was going to say last week, but that's not honest. Last time,
not quite.
We covered how to find auditions. But one really easy way to find auditions is just to watch this podcast every week.
What?
Crazy. In the description we have...
go on.
Yeah. What? Wait, there's more. Actually, there's not more. I haven't started yet. That's not how you do that. Billy Mays here. Do you need auditions to audition for? And see, I just did it again. Do you need casting calls to audition for? Well, so do we. And because for some reason we're masochistic and think that we should have more competition, we're gonna tell you what we're auditioning for so you can audition for it too.
That's right. Bring it on.
Alright, so in the description, I have actually 2 casting calls. I didn't find a lot because I haven't been looking for them a lot recently because I've been trying to graduate. But there's a couple of decent ones down there. There is one for The Stolen Hope, which is actually a relatively prominent series on the internet. It's pretty good. It's pretty great. There's 2 minor characters. I think they only show up in one episode, but one episode's better than no episodes. 1 male and 1 female. Just go check that out. It's a really good person making that. And then there's one that I just found. It's called Survive. Sounds pretty intense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because you have to survive to camp, and camping is intense.
Yeah, dude, that's metal.
It's really metal. But that one looks pretty good. Let's see. That was like... I can't scroll down. Why can't I scroll down? I don't know what's going on. There's a handful of characters there. But yeah, you could go check that one out too. I know I'll be auditioning for these. Probably. However, don't rely on us to find casting calls, because I don't put every casting call I find out, because not every casting call I find I feel is worth my time, or it looks very good, or looks like I would enjoy it, and so...
Or it's so worth your time, you don't want to share it with anyone.
Or it's so worth my time, and I want the part so badly that I don't want to tell anybody about it. And so that's sometimes the case, so look for yourself. We already told you how to do that in the last episode. If you haven't seen the last episode, do that after you watch this episode, and then it'll be kind of like Star Wars, where it's like you start in the middle and then you go to the beginning, and the beginning wasn't as good as the middle, but it's still good, kind of.
That's right, Cour. This is exactly like Star Wars.
This is exactly like Star Wars.
How did you know?
This is episode 4, and it's actually good, and it's got Harrison Ford. Not really. It's just better than the first episode.
So, tell me then, Cour, after you find a casting call that you decide you want to audition for, what should you do to actually make a good, solid audition?
Well, first of all, you need a microphone. If you don't know how to use a microphone, you should probably reconsider your idea to become a voice actor.
No, that's very true. Kind of an essential step, and if you're not willing to take the time to look it up yourself, yeah, you might not be as motivated as you first thought to actually get into this kind of business.
You know, I see a lot of younger aspiring voice actors commenting on casting calls like, "Hey, I'd love to audition, but I don't know how." And that's fine because, you know, you're probably young. I assume these people are young. Maybe they're not, but
probably.
I feel bad if you're not. I'm sorry if you're one of those people and you're not actually young and you're offended. I apologize.
Point is, you have to start somewhere, and we get that.
And so that's what this is for. So first of all, microphone should be plugged in your computer. There's not a lot we can help you with there. If you don't know how to plug it into your computer, consult. Maybe it comes with a manual.
Yeah, there are just a lot of USB microphones out there. Plug and play. You plug it in, it downloads the software, and you're good to go. You open up a free software like Audacity, and then you can record straight from there.
We'll have Audacity download link in the description. Audacity is a nice free digital audio workplace. It's really easy to use. There's just this big button, this circular button with a red circle in the circle. It's concentric. It's pretty great. You just click it, and then it starts recording. And then you click the stop button, which is a square, and then you're done recording. And then you go to File, Export, and you export the file. It's really, really simple. And if you can't figure it out from there, use Google. We can't teach you everything here, because otherwise these episodes would be unlawfully long. It's against the law how long they would be. And,
that's right.
And so just use Google for things you don't know, because we can't tell you everything.
Let's act under the assumption now that people understand how to take a basic recording of their audition. So we've got past that first step.
We'll get into this next episode, but most casting calls will have rules. Those rules are generally pretty basic things, such as you must have a good mic. You must be able to emote. These are simple things that are really pointless to have in the rules, but sometimes...
I mean, because, yeah, they're basically just saying, we have to be able to get your lines somehow. You have to actually be acting.
Yeah, and it's a little silly. But sometimes, every so often, there's an actual rule that's actually important. For example, some people will be like, don't ever go off script. Don't ever change the lines even a little. And if they say that, as awful as, and as cringeworthy as that is to me, being an actor, you have to listen to that. You can't, they won't cast you if you're breaking their rules, probably. Mm-hmm. So you gotta pay attention to those things. Also, usually in the description of the video, there will be stuff that's important to know, like send me over email or post a video. If you don't know how to post a video or use email, I'm sorry, you can't ask Hillary Clinton and you can't ask us because we don't have time to tell you.
Yeah, I think the most important rules to actually look at, because like we said, most of them are just about, you know, like how you actually get lines in or how to, you know, you need to act. Other things that are good to note are, like you said, if they say don't alter the script at all. Even if they don't have that, I think it's a good idea to send a couple takes, if you're sending in lines or an audition, whatever, of what they had written, and then a take or two with your alteration, just to kind of keep their own, you know, work intact as long as you can. So that's one rule that I think is important to look at. Another is, some people who put up casting calls specify whether, like, a boy can try out for a girl character or a girl can try out for a boy character, because some people want to really stick, you know, with the genders. And I think that's fair to be able to look at that. And another rule to look at is, if they specify how long they expect you to take between lines. So, like, if you get the part, they might have, you know, a mandatory deadline of 2 weeks from the lines. You have to have them in. Otherwise, I'm getting a new actor. So, it's good to know, it's good to have those expectations when you're going into a part to make sure that you can actually stay in the game for as long as they need.
Yeah, so just read everything you can possibly find while you're looking at their video and their description. So generally there's a couple lines for each character in the video somewhere, usually in the description, sometimes in the actual video itself. And those are the lines you have to record for the character. Now, some people will tell you, do each line 3 times differently and send it in. And I'm not going to say that because sometimes there are some lines that are just so simple. There's only really so many ways you can say the same line and make it actually interesting and different. And so if you're saying this line over and over and you realize this isn't different, there's not a different way I can say this that makes sense, then 1 time sometimes is actually enough. Sometimes 2 times. Actually, there's sometimes where a line is so complex that I'll do it up upwards of 5 times because there's so many ways I can think of. There's not an arbitrary number of times you need to say a line before it's good. Just keep doing it different ways, and make sure they're different ways. If you're saying the same line the same way over and over again, then that's going to tell them that you don't know how to act or take direction because you're not changing anything up. You're just spouting the same line at them. And then if they're ever like, hey, could you redo this line? Then they'll just expect you to send them the same line again, and that's bad.
Yeah, so if I may touch on that, I do think that 3 is a good guideline, but it's not a hard and fast rule. Like you said, there are some lines that, you might feel that you can give it, even more ways. I wouldn't overwhelm the person hosting the casting call. I think that 5 is probably the most you should do. And honestly, I think that if their line is so simple that you can't think of 3 ways at least to deliver that line, then that's probably a fault of theirs.
Exactly.
As the host.
And that goes back to the changing lines. If you ever... this happens a lot with people who aren't English speakers. English isn't their first language. I've seen a couple of instances like that where the line just does not flow very well. And so I'll send them a couple with their actual what is written, and then I'll also send a couple with slightly revised with the way I think the character would say that. Because you want to give them both, because if they decide that they don't like the way you said the adjusted line, then they've got nothing to work with. But if you send them both, then they've got something they can work with. So, moving on to other important things, chatter. One of the things that I think was almost a mistake when I first started was I was very talkative. I didn't cut my auditions a lot. I would just send them this raw this raw, unedited string of me talking that would include not only me saying their lines, but also me trying to get into the character, me experimenting with the character, and me just not using grammar correctly like I do. I just kind of ramble and stutter. And, some people found it funny and enjoyed it and still cast me, which is another important lesson. A bad audition can still get you a role. But it's still better to have a good audition because the people who are super professional will not appreciate a bad audition. Some people might just be like, oh, this is a bad audition, I'm not going to cast this person. Because they obviously don't
some
care.
people, I'm sure, only listen to the first few seconds, and if they don't like what they hear... It's like when people pick up a book. If they don't like it within the first few pages, they might just stop reading altogether.
And so I usually do this opening like, hey, my name is Cour, and I'm here to audition for your marvelous casting call, whatever its name is. And I'll have a couple seconds. I try and limit it to 30 seconds, where I'm just introducing myself, mentioning their casting call, saying characters I'm going to do, maybe telling a joke about the characters. Like I'll usually come up with some kind of pun about their names. Like I auditioned for a character named Reed, and so I'm like, I'm gonna read his lines, but ching, and then I got into it, and so the pun helps them remember you. They're like, oh, that's the guy that made that sick Reed pun. And it was beautiful. But if you spend too much time on introduction, they'll just be like, this person is boring, or this person's not here for the acting. Click. Next. Done here.
And with that said, there are definitely multiple ways where you can do it, because I, on the other hand, tried to keep my auditions to a bare minimum. Where if I slate, it's just, hello, my name is Dean Richards, and I'm going to be auditioning for such and such. So with that said, here we go. And then I read the lines. Or I just have the lines. And just that. Which, honestly, I think it's better to have some kind of slate. I do. So they get a feel of, what your actual voice is, and maybe a bit about your personality. But I try to take as little of their time as possible, just because I feel that a lot of animators, especially the bigger ones with really big casting calls that are receiving a lot of auditions, I know that they, their time is precious. And so, and if they ever want to go back to listen to my audition again, I don't want them to have to, wade through a sea of me talking to hear my takes. So I think that there are pros and cons to both. And I don't think that there's any one right way. But they both have worked for us, so awesome.
Exactly, and that's why I try and limit it to 30 seconds, is because I don't want them to have to sit through me talking for a long period of time before they actually get to my acting. I had something else to say, and then I just totally lost it.
Well, just with that then, to let you think for a moment, I've seen auditions that were 4 or 5 minutes long, and they only read 5 lines. And it's like, oh goodness, because after every line, they would, like laugh and complain about how they were so bad at reading the lines and all of this. It was cringeworthy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be mean, I'm definitely not going to say any names, but it was bad.
Yeah, no, if you take 5 minutes to do 5 lines, they're just gonna be like, this person's not very efficient. And, yeah. But the other side of it is, having the slate is important because a lot of people will not just be looking for actors that will do the part well, but actors that they can have fun making this project with. Because a lot of these people, they're doing this project for fun. If they don't have actors that they enjoy talking to and working with, then they're not going to want to work with them. So you're not just selling your acting, sometimes you're selling yourself.
Another thing that I think is important when you're looking at a casting call and wanting to audition is deciding who you're going to audition for, or whom rather you're going to audition for. It's important to look at, the personality that the host of the casting call gives. It's important to look at the voice range that they give, or if they give an example voice, go listen to that. And just in general, try to see if you could actually fit the voice, the personality, etc. of that character. If not, of course you're free to experiment, but you may just want to look elsewhere to find a place where you're more comfortable, where you can more easily reach particular ranges, because I know in the past I or friends have experimented for a role, and I pushed myself to the bottom of my range or something like that, and I got the part, and then I couldn't deliver quite the way that they wanted to. Like, I wasn't able to replicate my performance or go beyond that because I was already at my limits. So it is important to know kind of where you stand within, the voice, the vocal range, etc., etc. Anything to add about characters, or should I move on?
Well, that's exactly the thing. It's like, if Dean and I were both looking at the same casting call, and there's 2 characters, one of which is a small boy, and one of which is this kind of gruff old man character, then it's just very obvious that Dean would go for the small boy character, because that just fits his archetype a lot better, and I would go for the gruff old man character. Because that's just the voices that we can do. I'm a baritone, lower bass kind of guy. I mean, I can get more up there, but my voice is just too resonant to sound like anybody younger. I can go high, but this just sounds weird. Like, I could probably do some weird cartoon character with this kind of voice, but nobody wants a little boy to sound like this. It's just kind of creepy.
And to me, that just kind of sounds like a guy trying to sound like a girl.
I just sound like a guy trying to sound like a higher guy, and now I just sound like Michael Jackson. Also, if you ever make a mistake in one of your takes, don't leave it in your audition.
That's right. I mean, you're not doing a live performance. You have the power to actually go back through your audition file and edit it.
And make the perfect audition. If you mispronounce something, if you stutter, if you peak, which is like when you go really loud and it makes that weird, like, distortion-y noise, that's peaking. You don't want to ever do that, because it sounds really, you notice it sounds really bad. I mean, unless you're a robot. If you're supposed to sound like a robot, you could probably do that on purpose. But if you're peaking,
you probably just want to use
other effects. There's an easier way to do that that's also less damaging to your microphone. But yeah, that was a bad idea. I probably shouldn't have done that. But anyway.
Probably not. But hey, it was the perfect example.
It was a good example.
And that's actually a good segue. I think it's also important to have a clean recording. So on top of, if you mess up on a take, just redo the take and edit that part out. But on top of that, try to have your recording sound good. Don't record outside. Don't record when there are a bunch of people, like, hammering on the walls or clinking around dishes or something like that. Try to find an opportunity in a quiet spot where you can record. If preferable, I'd say try to get away from, like, even the fan of your computer. I unfortunately cannot, but I try to do what I can to. I turn off my ceiling fan, I close the window, I try to get rid of as much background sound as I can.
And one of the things I invested in was I got a microphone stand, like an actual, like, stand, and so I'll, like, set up my microphone stand, like, a foot or, like about a yard away from my computer, and I'll be recording away from my computer just because my fan gets so loud sometimes, especially in this hot weather when it's trying to keep my computer cool. And I just having that fan in the background is really awful. In fact, actually, I've had some days where I had to postpone my recording because there were birds singing outside. It was like, I mean, it was beautiful and it was great, and it's like nature, fantastic. But it's not something you want in the background of your recording. It's really distracting, and it also shows that you don't really care a whole lot about the quality, and that is really off-putting and usually just not very attractive to the animators. Or
even if you're going to apologize and say like, sorry, I'm outside, so the wind is blowing, and you have like a great voice, a lot of animators, they want to hear in your audition what kind of sound quality they can expect when you're actually turning in lines. So even if you do apologize and explain your situation, it's still, I think it's fair to say, weighs down on your performance overall.
Exactly. And well, that's pretty much most of the points. That's what you need to think about when you're auditioning. And remember that just because your audition's not perfect, and just because you don't follow all of these examples, doesn't mean you won't get a part. You can definitely get a role with an awful audition. I've seen it happen all the time. I've been that person. I've had awful auditions where I went back a couple months later and I was like, wow, I really didn't do a very good job in that audition, but I still got the role, because sometimes they don't care. But you should assume that they care, because these steps will help you get more roles. Probably. I mean,
Probably.
You might just be an awful
actor. It's safe
actor.
to say it will improve your chances.
It will improve your chances of being cast. And isn't that just a wonderful thing? You know?
So wonderful.
To wrap things up, I am just so glad to be doing this, because I feel like there's not a lot of places people can go where they can consistently get tips on how to do voice acting. And I feel like that is one of the things that's really harming our community as voice actors. I really want to see the voice acting community grow for a couple of reasons. One of those is there's not a lot of male voice actors. Like, there's a handful of very prominent ones, but for the most part, a lot of casting calls I see, they'll just like write out all the male roles because they're like, I can't ever find any good male voice actors. And I think if there were more of us, then maybe they'd start casting more of us. It's kind of like the snowball effect. The more voice actors there are, the more available we are, the more people can make projects that need voice actors, in a lot of voice actors, and the bigger projects can get. And I think that's exciting.
To have a bigger, more tight-knit community where we're all rooting for each other, that'd be really cool.
You know, sometimes I'm going for a role that I feel like his voice just really fits this role a lot better than mine does. And then maybe I actually get the part, or maybe Dean gets the part. It doesn't matter, because sometimes the role is actually way different than what you imagined, than what the animator's imagining. And so you just gotta go for it sometimes. And with that said, have a wonderful week. Have a nice life. Voice some things. Go audition for the things in the description. And don't play in the street.
All right. Take care, everybody.
See ya.